Hello, my name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome to a Tuesday version of the 905 Roundup. Today we are doing this is the last Tuesday prior to the Ontario election, which will officially be on Thursday. Just so you can mark this in your calendars, people, we're going to be doing there'll be no episode on Thursday. Instead, we'll be doing a special live cast that evening starting at 9 p.m. As the votes come in and the seats get won, we'll be following and we'll be giving you our expert insight analysis, and a few other people hopefully will be joining us to share their insight and what this will mean for the future, not only of the 905, but of Ontario for presumably the next 4 years, as it's going to look like. So make a note, we'll be posting links to join us all over social media. So make sure you like, follow, share, spread the word. It'll be a good, fun night, hopefully, for all of us. But on that note, we're going to focus on the election because we've been covering it in our own way for the last, I'm going to say it's almost been 2 months since we started doing the leader interviews and then our breakdown of the platform. So almost 2 months of covering this roller coaster of I know I'm not even going to that's the point of this episode. We can't even call it a roller coaster. It's just been completely
merry-go-round,
not what we expected.
Roller coaster isn't the right word, is it?
No, we were expecting this to be
coconut shy.
A little bit. We're looking there going, based on the last 2-3 years of the global pandemic and the outrage that was felt by millions of people in the 905 over various Doug Ford and Ontario progressive conservative government policies relating directly to COVID, we thought this was going to be a cakewalk for the NDP or the Liberals to walk out and take a lead in this easily. As we can tell from the polls and the mood in the province, that is clearly not the case. And that's kind of what we want to talk about tonight, is just, where did this thing go south for the progressive option in this province?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem to have come alive, this election. And I guess, we did foresee that, I think, in that we both looked at the two main opposition leaders, and we questioned their ability to really kind of set the world alight in terms of, their personal charisma or whatever. And I kind of hate the fact that elections come down to personal charisma, but unfortunately they do. The Stephen Del Duca was fighting an uphill battle in terms of anybody actually knowing who he is after 4 years, which, fine, third place leader, third leader of the third party, not having the money that the Liberals have previously enjoyed. You can make excuses. He also failed to get himself elected to in any by-election. Which is,
well, he didn't run in any by-election. No. That should also be pointed out, which I thought was that to me was a puzzling stratagem to say, you need to get your face on the news as much as possible. And a good, easy way to do that is if you're in third place and you don't have a lot of money to do a lot of events, win yourself a seat and get yourself on question period so that you at least get some news coverage every night on the evening news.
And even negative coverage, because I think back to John Tory, right? John Tory had a huge problem trying to get himself elected to Parliament. He lost twice, I think. He was beaten by Kathleen Wynne, I have a feeling. He ran against Kathleen Wynne and she beat him, and he ran in a rural riding and he lost that. But on the other hand, everybody knew who he was by the time the election came around, and I don't think you can say the same for Stephen Del Duca. I think
a lot of the problem is that people are now discovering Stephen Del Duca. For a while, when you ask who was the leader of the Liberals, they probably still would have said, Kathleen Wynne. People are now just starting to wake up and see who he is, and it's too little, too late.
And I do recognize, I think we have to recognize that it's much harder than you think to get media attention for provincial politics at any time other than during a provincial election. And this is a problem that I know the Liberals constantly found problematic when they were in office, because it's like, okay, we've got all this good stuff, but no one will cover it. And you may think it wasn't good stuff, but whatever. Things that the party felt it couldn't get its messaging out. The opposition equally feel they can't get their messaging out, and it is a real problem. And in a world where fewer and fewer of us watch cable television, I've probably seen 2 political ads during this election, which is kind of weird when you think about it. It would have been by now I was pulling my hair out from being sick of seeing political attack ads, and I haven't seen any. I guess they're running somewhere, but not where I go. So do you recognize that?
On that note, I mean, this is something you and I talked about, is that this campaign, the Liberals and the NDP are pulling the playbook. You want to say from 2018? I'm going to say even further back from that. They're going 2011. I think they're even going like 2003. They're thinking back to when McGuinty won against Ernie Eves way back in the day, and that's kind of the playbook that they're using in this election, which is woefully out of date for the modern times. You made a good point with, oh yeah, it's really hard to use the traditional media to get your message out there, and yet I look at it and say, why do you need the traditional media except at election times just to say, yeah, I'm in this town, I'm seeing this thing on this date? You had 4 years. Del Duca had 4 years. He was elected just prior to when the pandemic hit. They had a good number of years to use social media, use new media, use new technology to reach out and break the mold that they're relying on now, to break that mold and to go over the heads of the talking heads of the media, go around the Tories and beat them at their own game. They could do something really, and this goes for the NDP as well, I should say. They could use that to make something really unique, and they don't. And I don't know if that's because it's a lack of, I think I know why the NDP did it, and they just felt it was their turn. I always find the NDP are very lazy in terms of this stuff. They want it, and they think they deserve it, and when they don't get it, it's always somebody else's fault.
But I think they sometimes fall for their own hype. That every election I've been in Canada, well, every election since the Ignatieff election, where the federal Liberals went into 3rd place, I've seen the tweets and the comments about, oh yeah, the orange wave is coming. And it's like, yeah, you can say that, but it really isn't. That's not how elections actually work. When you talk about momentum and all this kind of stuff, like it's a game of football, it's not. It's kind of baloney, but I think people sometimes fall for it. And this idea that, well, if only we can get the Liberals out of the way, everybody actually wants to vote NDP. It's just because we have this electoral system where people vote Liberal because they feel they have to. Well, what's your excuse now? And I'm not having a go at the NDP particularly. I think we've been pretty even-handed in not having a go at absolutely everybody.
I do too. I mean, there were when we did our coverage on our analysis of all the party platforms, I thought we were pretty even-handed in terms of what we thought worked and where we thought the platforms fell short, and all of them did fall short in certain. I think comprehensively, what I got out of it was the fact that all of the 3 major opposition parties, including the Greens, on this, just kind of, I always felt that you didn't acknowledge the fact that we came out of a global pandemic. Like there's nothing to address the manufacturing shortfalls that are existing on the supply chain. There's nothing to address the idea is, we'll just throw some money at long-term care homes, which is something that you and I talked about beforehand. Why was that not the albatross around Doug Ford's neck? Was the long-term care homes? And here's if any political party is listening out there and they want to hire me as a consultant, here's what I would have done. I would have had my leader, let's call them Leader X, standing outside of pick a long-term care home. One that had a horrible track record during the pandemic.
There's no shortage.
And no shortage. Like you may do a slideshow of them and just stare directly at the camera and ask the viewer, are you comfortable with sending your loved one here, knowing everything that we've been through in the last 2 years? Right now, this moment, are you comfortable putting your loved one, your mother or your father in this, or your wife or your husband in one of these homes? If the answer is no, you have to thank Doug Ford. And that to me, that is it. You don't need a long-winded answer, because everybody knows the answer to that. The answer is no. God, no. The last place I wanted to go is a long-term care home in this province.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah,
and instead, like, you had,
I was speaking to a friend at the weekend, and you know, a friend who had reason to remember with no great pleasure the whole gas plant issue, and how that was made a millstone around the neck of two premiers. Now, fair enough, those two premiers still managed to win elections during it. It was only at the third kind of kick at the can that it really caught up. However, eventually the opposition made that issue really stick to the Liberals. Now, no one died in the gas plant scandal. It was money at worst, and there was a whole lot of, you can argue here and there and the other way about the truth, and not so much truth about the gas plant thing. But what we do know with long-term care is that people were dying abandoned in their beds of COVID, unvaccinated, unprotected. The staff were leaving because they didn't feel safe. Everybody's worst nightmare of dying alone, abandoned in a squalid, in utter situation of
undignified manner possible,
happened. We let that happen, and it happened on Doug Ford's watch. Why is that not even, far less of a millstone? It's not even a pebble around his neck. Yeah, I mean, it really seems that the long-term care issue should be the gas plant story around the neck of this government. The thing that they simply cannot get off their back, and yet the opposition just hasn't made that issue stick.
It tells me if they took the pandemic seriously or not. And I think that's kind of why Andrea Horwath and Stephen Del Duca are not registering with people. Is that people took it there are a lot of people who did take it seriously. You see their reaction to the truck convoy in Ottawa, and how people were upset with how that played out, and just not how it played out, but just the sheer anger that people had towards how dare these people make light of the last 2 or 3 years, that that they say, like, we weren't going through it, we weren't dealing with the pain of it all, the lost loved ones due to COVID, the lost businesses, the cutting off of social connections, because that's what you had to do. And that anger, I think, is still there. It's shifted. The anger has shifted from how dare these people to more of a defeatist, like, I'm on my own kind of attitude. Like, it's clear, like, Del Duca and Horwath weren't paying attention to the same script as the rest of us. And that's what I'm thinking we're seeing in the polls right now isn't so much an endorsement of Doug Ford. It's just people realize, I'm on my own. These people didn't get it. They don't get the fact that I want to work from home. They don't get the fact that I want, I'm concerned about my affordability, and nobody's talking about, people feel like they aren't standing up for themselves, right? The systems are broken. Things don't work. And again, the thing that Del Duca keeps hammering home is, the buck a ride. That's what his campaign has been known for, is this buck a ride platform piece. And the sad thing is, there were parts in that platform that I thought, wow, that's a really comprehensive thing to back up, hey, we get it, the system's broken, we need to fix it. And that's not what they're playing. They're going for this, let's go for the quick, 1, 2, 3 catchphrase, and maybe that will buy some votes. And it's clearly not, because I think the votes that he wants to attract, the votes that Andrea Horwath and Del Duca are shopping for, are smart enough to say, yeah, I don't care. And again, we just point out, those are the people who said, the good thing about the pandemic was I liked working from home. I don't want to go back on a GO train into Toronto 5 days a week. No, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and obviously there are some people who don't have the choice, but there are an awful lot of people who someone made the point to me a few weeks ago, it's only us downtown elites who get to work from home, and I don't actually think that's true. I really don't think that's entirely true. I mean, to sort of imply that anybody who works in an office is an elite is just garbage. An awful lot of people are or office workers who spend most of the time working at a computer, and those people, I just can't see how it doesn't make sense for them to work at home at least part of the time. So yeah, the failing to capture the imagination in any shape or form, I don't really get. I mean, and we know that there are people involved in these campaigns who have had success. Like, I mean, I believe Don Guy, who was kind of the architect in many ways of the McGuinty era victories, he's had victories out west in BC as well, and kind of skipped the Win era and very much came back home again when Del Duca was elected leader. These are people who should know what they're doing, but I mean, I think maybe the world has just moved on, and that neither Horwath nor Del Duca have kind of grasped that. And while, I mean, I remember being at a event a decade or so ago with Don Guy, and the famous phrase was, someone made some comment about going negative on the Conservatives, and the phrase was, "Don't get into a pissing contest with a skunk." And at the time, I thought that was brilliant, and I think for McGuinty, for coming from the position of actually being in government, it made a lot of sense. Because it's like, if you just throw mud at each other, you'll end up covered with crap, and none of you end up looking good. And I do get that. However, a real scandal is a real scandal, and it deserves to be hammered. And I think we live in a world now where people get hammered constantly for things which aren't even remotely factual. But we don't hammer people for actual scandals that happen, like old people dying in corridors by the hundreds for weeks on end, for months on end in 2020 because of government failure. And I don't get
how the NDP or the Liberals cannot get an endorsement from a number of doctors across this province to say this, people died because of this government's policies. Like we saw this happening. It astounds me. Like, it's almost like they just actively said, no, we'll treat this like every other. And that's what gets me. Like, this should not have been an election. This should have been a referendum on the system is broken because of Doug Ford. Doug Ford's government did not invest in what was needed. Things are collapsing. Things are broken. Things don't work. It's on him to fix it. He's not doing it. This is my plan to fix it. And that is not what's happening here. It is the NDP come across as whiny and petulant, as hey, it's our turn now, get out of the way, we should be sitting in the seats of power, but they haven't done anything to earn it. And the Liberals are coasting on what they presume everybody else sees. And it is that Liberal arrogance. It's, hey, doesn't everybody else see how bad Doug Ford is doing? And they themselves say, yeah, we all know he's doing badly. I've yet to meet somebody who looks at Doug Ford and say, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing. He's the leader that I want at at the head of the ship for the next 4 years. I've yet to meet that person. The best I heard is he did the best he could with what he got. That's the best endorsement I heard of Doug Ford to date. And the fact that it's that Liberal arrogance of, of course they're not going to vote for him. They're going to they'll see what we see, because that's just it. And I think it's their undoing. I think it is the Liberal Party's undoing and the NDP's undoing on this one, that they assumed too much and they didn't want to do the legwork, and they're chalking up, I think, laziness to not adapt to the pandemic, because the thing you'll say, we couldn't do press conferences because of the pandemic. And I'm kind of like, yeah, why would you don't do a press conference? You could do anything. You could start your own, podcast. You could start your own YouTube channel. You could do anything to promote your leader. If he's not able to sit in the legislature, you could do anything to promote him. Just think outside the box. And they didn't. They just, that's what we have to do. We have to get the media inside. Like, no, you don't. That's the thing that Doug Ford has proven. You don't need the media to win in this province. You just don't.
And I think the fact that he didn't try harder to get himself into the legislature. And it's it'll be interesting to see. I hear the Conservatives are throwing considerable resources at Vaughan to stop him winning. It'll be interesting to see whether Del Duca wins or not.
We'll find out on Thursday.
Yeah, that really seems to me like the minimum requirement. Now, I don't know, this is all rumor and hearsay and so on, but you know, you don't throw resources at one of the other leaders' ridings unless you think you've got a chance. You know, no one's throwing a whole lot of money at Hamilton Centre right now, to put it that way. I doubt, I don't even know what riding Doug Ford represents, but or Etobicoke, I guess, but I doubt the parties are throwing a whole lot of money at that. So if they are throwing money at Vaughan, that says something.
Why don't we take a break from that for now, and we'll come back after it for the latter half of the episode. And we're back, folks. So we're going to take a peek more locally for this one. If you're in Hamilton, no doubt you might have heard of the antics of everyone's favorite old-timey councillor Terry Whitehead. Just went off the rails a few days ago in a council meeting that, you know, it kind of left a lot of people, I think, shaking their heads and just pondering what was going through his mind and what's going on there. Because if in case you weren't aware of what happened at the council meeting, Terry Whitehead went off on a whole conspiracy rant, basically decrying it was things that he saw online, social media, and what have you. One of the more outrageous claims that he made was that there's a cabal of 10%. A cabal of a few people on social media who only make up 10% of things said, but that's consuming 90% of the council's time and energy and whatnot. And you know, it's I don't know. We know that Terry Whitehead took a break to pursue his own mental health wellness, which commend him for. And we bring it up because I'm wondering. I'll say it. Do you think it did him any work, any good? Like did he actually get any treatment? Because I'd be worried. I'd be looking to say maybe this isn't the best line of work for him if that's the case. Like if he does have serious mental health issues, whatever they may be that he's sorting through, really, like it appears that this is the wrong line of work that he should be in to really nurture that side of him to healthfulness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. It's important when we're talking about someone's mental health, and he's the one who well, actually, he didn't say mental health. He talked about a health issue. I think the world has assumed, for whatever reason, that it's a mental health issue, and I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption, given Councillor Whitehead's long-standing behaviour. I mean, this is not new. You know, it seems at the moment that he very much has decided to run almost as an act of spite against the people who are urging him not to run and hoping and praying that anybody else might win.
I would go furthermore and say his perceived enemies, because I mean he was going on for a whole rant about conspiracies and whatnot. I mean it kind of I'll be honest, it kind of crossed the line from farcical into like, are you okay?
Yeah, I don't think Councillor Whitehead is okay, really, and I don't want to. It's a difficult thing because, you know, these days mental health is far too often used as an excuse for bad behavior, for getting away with bad behavior. You know, we saw with the recent shootings in the States that Republican politicians' latest gambit is to say, oh, well, you know, this is someone with a mental health problem. And maybe, yeah, I mean, I think you have to be kind of troubled to pick up a gun and shoot people. But that doesn't get anybody off the hook for anything, you know. So it seems that Councillor Whitehead is in not the best of health. His behaviour for long periods has been far short of what is considered acceptable behavior for a public servant, for an elected official,
for anybody. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and you know, his behavior is often eccentric. It's bullying. It's unpleasant. You know, and I always like to point out that mental health doesn't turn you into an asshole. The stuff we had with Rob Ford back in the day, making racist comments. It's like, oh well, you know, it's a mental health problem. It's like, well, you know, I've had mental health problems. I've never been a racist. I've never come out with stuff like that. Right. So mental health is not a excuse for being really very unpleasant person who is not fulfilling the job, But does this play in his ward? I don't know Hamilton. I don't know that part of Hamilton well enough to even know that we are now in a world where politicians who are self-consciously kind of courting chaos almost of being, okay, I'm going to be the person who throws the biggest hand grenade into this to just mess everything up. That is actually appealing to a lot of voters. It's the kind of primal scream school of politics that we're in now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the guy reelected, I've got to say.
Well, but you touched upon something there that's a little bit insidious, and I'm not going to accuse Councillor Whitehead of doing this, but it's something that we see. So his behavior is reminiscent of a lot of, especially now. It's a good timing to kind of compare apples to apples, in my opinion, because we've seen south of the border the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, and it brought to light, again, the gun control debate comes in for a weekend or two now back into the United States psyche, and you see the same politicians like the Ted Cruz, the Donald Trumps, and the Mitch McConnells and whatnot. They all decry people saying, well, let's have a debate on it, as, oh no, it's the liberal leftists, the media, they want to, it's a conspiracy to politicize the issue, and whatever talking point they have. And I kind of see mirrors of that in what happened this weekend in Hamilton City Council. I mean, clearly not under the umbrella of that horrific tragedy. I'm not don't want to make light of that, but the same tactics and the same antics of, oh, it's this conspiracy. There's a conspiracy of, the councillors they're conspiring against me, and it's this cabal of leftists that don't want me to speak the truth and don't want me to tell it like it is. And I mean, it's vague enough and it's ambiguous enough that it sounds serious, and it sounds like, wow, they just don't want him to speak, and they should just let what happened to open debate in democracy, and say, yeah, but this isn't debate. This isn't a Roland, I think we should spend money on this project. And you say, well, no, Joel, I think that should be a top priority of the city. Well, I'm going to disagree on that one. I think this should be a top priority. And no, that's democracy. That's what a city council democratic process is supposed to be like. How do you spend the resources of the city? And you can have people very passionate about project X versus project Y, or cause A to cause B. That's democracy. But when you get into this ambiguous accusation being thrown around about councillors involved in a shadowy conspiracy to silence debate and to bully and to it's a conspiracy against me, who does this benefit other than Terry Whitehead in pursuing his bullying agenda? Let's remember, this is a guy who at a council meeting on speed bumps on roads in Hamilton decided that he had to go on and bully basically just panelists, people who came to the microphone to advocate for to slow down traffic on their streets. And he took it upon himself, well, I'm going to take this to bullying the citizen and belittle them. And it's like, this is the behavior we want to encourage and we want to endorse. At some point we just have to say, no, this is not democratic. This isn't democracy in action. This is your ego. This is your disrespect of the rest of us, and you have to go.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that message is getting through to the voters of Councillor Whitehead's ward. I really hope it is, because it's not good enough. Now, he is the tip of an ugly iceberg at the end of the day. I mean, he's a very vocal, if I can mix all my metaphors, he's a very vocal tip on an ugly iceberg. The things that he's saying, this kind of leftist cabal of conspiracy to take over Hamilton, this is being said by two former mayors. Certainly Larry Diani is very much spouting this myth. Of this kind of leftist takeover, which and kind of Bob Bertina's seems to me is also trying to sort of channel that stop the keep the enemies away from the gates or whatever, and this is directed at Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Narendra Nann, and Councillor John Paul Danko are kind of the three who are for that. Jean-Paul Danko is a pretty funny communist, you know? And so is Maureen Wilson and Andrea Nann. I mean, these are moderate people who are suggesting ideas that are completely mainstream in many cities around the world. Things like, you know, maybe our roads could be arranged slightly better, you know, and the hysteria with which these comments are met, you know, the suggestion that maybe we don't let trucks and cars just mow people down on King Street every week is met with the kind of opinion that,
how dare you come with this leftist pinko commie rabble?
Well, and I do think it's a syndrome that councillors who've been around too long. I mean, I never used to be a fan of term limits because I thought it was a hack. It's a way to hack the system to deal with a problem, and it's like a decent democracy shouldn't need it. In practice, though, councillors who stay around more than 2 or 3 terms, things get ugly. They really need to go. Yeah, well,
here's a good lesson. Like, if you're a voter in whatever city you happen to be in, we're coming in. You know, you're coming up to the polls, and we're going to have another election later in the year. So you should ask if your member has been there a long time. You know, ask like what were they hoping to accomplish, or what are they hoping to accomplish in 2 terms? Let's say, give you a reasonable time. Let's say like 2 full terms, because I believe if you're going to be a good, effective councillor or an MP, if you will, you should have an idea of, no, there's maybe 2 or 3 things locally I really want to advocate for. I really want to put forward at this level to get the money to do this or to stop this or whatever have you. You really want to do that. And then maybe you have other things to work on. But you really should have an agenda in mind and a plan of what I want to accomplish. Because I really think after a while, it just turns into a 9-to-5 job for you. You're not, and that's dangerous, that you have a lot of power and you have a lot of influence sometimes. And instead of using that to advance or to make your community better, your city better, your riding or whatever better, you just kind of treat it like, no, it's my 9-to-5 job. I go in, I punch out. Nobody's life is getting better. We're not building something better. We're not making a system better. It's just, you're there.
And I don't think they see it that way. I mean, I think usually they stay on because they like the job and because it's the best job they'll ever have, which is, again, it's the syndrome of like the worst people stay the longest because the worst people aren't going to get a better job. The good people can go and do something else. So after a couple of terms, they go. You know, we saw it with his name escapes me, the deputy mayor in London, Jesse Helmer.
Yeah,
you can't tell me that that's not a pretty smart guy, a hardworking guy who people should be lining up to have represent them. But you know, he's trying to get by on something like $20,000 a year, a wage designed for a part-timer. And he can go and do a lot of other things and earn a lot more money. So you're left with the people who, well, you know, the people who can't do anything better, and for whom having staff, you know, I mean, if you go into a city hall or any, you know, into Queen's Park or into Ottawa, politicians are surrounded by people who doff their caps. It's long traditions. It's like, yes, minister, yes, you know, MPP, so-and-so, you're accorded huge respect. And it's really a very destructive way to live. But I mean, some people it doesn't affect, it just bounces off and they appreciate it for the nonsense that it is. You know, and there's that, you know, if you remember watching The West Wing, they always called him Mr. President, not Jeb or whatever. And the arguments, well, you're because you're honoring the office, not the person. Well, it's you know, when you're getting that kind of cap doffing all the time, it's difficult to separate the person and the cap doffing after a while. So I mean, it poisons your brain.
The president also has term limits, though, Roland.
Well, that too, yeah. But you know, then again, would I have taken the 3rd term of Obama? Yes, I would. So it cuts both ways. But ultimately, there is a tendency for politicians who are around for a long time to become more and more arrogant because they feel they know more and more, and they are less and less willing to accept that anybody on an outsider who inherently does know less of the nitty-gritty detail of what they do, there's less and less willingness to accept that they even have the right to comment. And it's unfortunate because yeah, if you're a politician and you're sitting in a council chamber week after week, people come in and they say you're doing a terrible job, and they don't even know the whole picture that you do. Yep. I get that, but you have to keep that at forefront. That's their right, and ultimately they will understand the truth that maybe you're missing.
Well, here's the thing: this year, people have final stated kick people out or give them another crack they can. I think it's safe to say we both agree that Terry Whitehead should be shown the door after his years of service, because I don't see how his being elected will help council. It won't shake things up. It'll just make things worse.
Well, ultimately, and I'd say this for every councillor in Ontario, not just Hamilton. Ultimately, if you randomly picked councillors, you just stuck a pin in the phone directory, if phone directory still existed, and picked people and put them on council and gave them the same training that councillors get, they would do just as good a job after about 2 weeks, and often better. It's not anybody can do it, which is why there's no qualifications other than how many doors can you knock on. I mean, it's nice if you've got some bright sparks with some original ideas in there, but it's not actually essential. And I'd rather have someone with an open mind, which someone you just pick off the street probably would have because they don't come into it with a whole load of political baggage, than someone with a closed mind. It's really a method of selection that the older I get, that I'm a bigger and bigger fan of. Just pick anybody other than the people who want the job.
Why don't we leave it on that note for this week? So thanks everyone for staying with us for this episode. We'll be live on election night at 9 p.m. So put a pencil in your calendar for that, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.